Welcome back to Overtime here on WOTM. We talked to Alabama specific in the NFL draft, but there's also lots of great
storylines
throughout the course of the NFL draft. The top of the draft was not surprising. We knew Trevor Lawrence would be taken number one, and we had about a 99% chance that Zach Wilson would be taken two by the New York Jets. What about the rest of the draft? Is there anything that you saw as far as whether it's the first round or overall, some winners, some losers, some of the teams that you thought did well, or some players that you liked their specific fit where they were? For example, I really, really like Justin Fields going to the Chicago Bears. 11th overall, I think it was a really good play. Matt Nagy, both he and the GM Pace both know this is probably their last shot, so they need to make it work or they might not be having jobs here pretty soon. What were some of your takeaways as you saw the draft kind of play out and you saw teams fill some needs?
Now, remember, the Bears haven't really had that much luck drafting quarterbacks.
Exactly.
I mean, remember Cade McNown, for crying out loud? He was supposed to be the answer. If Trubisky, a lot of guys have not worked out for the Bears. So hopefully this is one that does, because I know a lot of people like Justin Fields. A lot of people, Broncos, ask how they feel.
Right.
I mean, they booed Patrick Surtain, who's a pretty good player, because they wanted Justin Fields.
Right.
So there were some of those in the first round. Normally, you hear Jet fans are the ones that are boring. They were actually pretty happy.
Right.
They thought that, and I think Joe Thomas had done a pretty good job establishing at least an identity.
Right.
Because it seems like they're following a plan now where before it was just chaos. I like what the Eagles did because they got Devonta Smith.
That's
okay.
Right.
They got Landon Dickerson too in the second round. So we talked about pairing guys. You have Chase, who is going to go with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. You have that pairing together. You have Tua and Waddle. And Miami had, I believe, 4 or 5 picks in the first 3 rounds, and that was already coming off a strong draft last year. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch in the AFC East. The Bills are going to be good. They had a pretty good draft. They got Rousseau from Miami with the 30th pick. And the Patriots made major offseason moves to bring in like Juju Smith and some guys to replace some of the non-production they had last year. And then you have Miami, who is young, and I love their coach, who has really seemed to gain some notoriety here these last 2 years. And I'm wondering, will Tua be that much better now that he has a year to heal? That's going to be the most interesting thing. He gets a major weapon, though, on Waddle, who can beat you a number of different ways.
Right, and I think a lot of the Miami fans and Miami personnel and people overall, they really are hoping that this will be the year that Tua kind of makes that jump. And I think adding Jalen Waddle was huge. Also ended up getting a lineman as well. Out of all the rookies, and obviously there's 200-something plus of them, so you can't really dynamically break down all of them. But most of these rookies will be asked to start and or play big roles for their football teams. A lot of them will. Which rookie do you see having a profound impact on their team next year? Maybe not necessarily Rookie of the Year or All-Pro, but just one of the ones that this time next year we'll be talking about how it was a good pick for X team.
Well, I think depending on how Jalen Hurts develops, I thought Devonta Smith was the most dominant wide receiver in the draft. He dropped because of his size and because Jamar Chase is probably just on the same level he is, and that's not putting down Devonta at all because that's how good Jamar Chase is. And I think that's one player I'm going to keep an eye on. Najee, because of the fit. Not just because he's Alabama. I'm going to get screamed at everybody that I'm a homer. Not just because of that, because Najee, it's a good fit for them. I think Etienne and Lawrence being together for Jacksonville, those things are going to work out for them. And you expect the Jets quarterback, you expect to be what Darnold wasn't. Because if you're going to give up on Darnold when they basically threw him under the bus, this guy better be good, and you better be right for giving up on Darnold, because that was something, I don't know, that was a pretty big risk. For the safe thing would have been to stay with Darnold. So we'll see. I mean, he gets a lot of comparisons to Aaron Rodgers. He can throw any throw he wants, but I've seen plenty of guys with good arms not read the defense. And being in that division we already discussed with the Bills, the Patriots, and the Dolphins, it's going to be really tough. So overall, I think those are things. Najee, definitely. I think Waddle's a guy you could probably kind of having a good year. Again, Alabama guys. Devonta Smith is another guy. And Etienne. I think Etienne, the way he can run the ball, is going to take a lot of pressure off a very young Jacksonville team down there. So I think those are guys you can really look forward to coming out right away and being successful right away.
There was a lot of talk about the quarterbacks going into this draft, and there was the overall thought, the consensus thought was this is probably the deepest talented class of quarterbacks that we've had in a very, very long time. Obviously led the way by Trevor Lawrence, who we knew from the end of the season last year that he was going to go number one. Actually, I'll take that back. We actually probably knew 2 years ago after he won that national championship with Clemson that he was going to be the number one overall player, barring injuries. Of the main quarterbacks that we saw, and of the main quarterbacks being Trevor Lawrence as well as Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and you can even throw in Kyle Trask there. Which quarterback do you think will have the best and biggest upside? I do think it'll be Trevor Lawrence, pairing him up with Urban Meyer down there. And also there is very, very little as it relates to pressure down there, I think, to play super well early on. I do think that he's got some kind of a quote-unquote no-bust potential. But of all the quarterbacks that were drafted, who do you think has the biggest upside?
Look, I think the guy that probably, two guys jump out to me that were drafted in the best position. Justin Fields going to the Bears. I think the Bears, the one thing that they couldn't do was develop offensive consistency because of Trubisky.
That's right.
And I think that he has the opportunity to give that because he can do a number of things. He doesn't have to come out and go in a shotgun and throw for 500 yards.
Right.
He can run the ball really well. They can run the option. Seems like he opens up their offense in ways that Trubisky didn't. So I like that about them. They got good offensive players in Chicago. I remember a couple of years ago they were one of the better offenses in the league.
Right.
So I think that's a really good spot for him. I like him to. If he's going to be successful, this is a good spot for him. Obviously, Mac Jones, I mean, you couldn't ask for better than to be in almost exactly the same system.
Right.
Maybe not have. It's funny because now you have a drop in talent from Alabama to the Patriots, who only won like how many Super Bowls in the last 2 decades. But it is, and I think what I like about him is that he can break into it slowly. He doesn't have to come in and be the main guy, but I think he can. We're talking 4 or 5 games of the year. If they decide to give him the reins, I think the way he develops with some of these wide receivers and running backs, I think he can. And that's a good spot for him. So those two guys, I would say, are probably in the best position.
I'd agree. And we'll see how it all shakes out this year. Keep in mind, there's one less preseason game, so we don't get a chance to see these guys on a lot. We see them kind of in the preseason, and then we'll find out how they do as the regular season starts back around. 17-game regular season gets underway very, very shortly. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, we will discuss staying in the NFL and talking about another quarterback that is seemingly blowing things up with the team, that he still has 3 more years left on his deal. That is Aaron Rodgers. We'll discuss the drama surrounding A-Rod coming up next year.